All right, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. So glad you made it out. Glad you made it out. Thank you and you for sticking it out. Forget about it. This is where there's something special. Today's message is titled "When the Bones Are Still Dry." When the bones are still dry. You ever go through a holiday and after the holiday's done, you feel just as tired as before it began? Huh? Not everyone who walks into the event or who is streaming from their house feels a celebration. Sometimes Pesach, even though it's the festival of freedom, and you have songs of triumph and victory, sometimes the matzah on the table tells us a different story. We were told the story of the Exodus a few nights ago, but somewhere between the Seder plate and today, life did not stop being difficult. We all still have challenges, still have kids to feed and to raise, and pets and cats and everything else to tend to. Some of us are bone tired, not from the cleaning of the Hamoed out of our kitchens or our houses, but from cleaning it out of our souls, year after year. And still, sometimes it feels like something is still stuck. Some of us are carrying grief, financial fear, or a marriage that is fraying, or a prodigal son, or a diagnosis that changed everything. Some of us are watching the world, Israel under threat, communities fracturing, a culture that seems to have lost all its moral compass, and wondering if the God of Exodus is still paying attention to what's going on. This is exactly where this Torah portion meets us this day. We are not reading about a triumphant Red Sea splitting. We're reading about what comes after. The broken tablets, the golden calf, the after stuff. After the big victory, the cleanup. After the big party, the organizing. But let me continue. The near collapse of everything, and right in the middle of the wreckage, Moshe asks a question to us. At the very exhausted, battle-worn heart, he asks, "Please, show us your glory." Not fix it, not explain it, just show us that you're still paying attention. Show us you're still here. That prayer is the prayer of Chol, Hamoed, Pesach, Shabbat. Today, the three valleys that every generation must walk through. Sociologists and mental health people have a vocabulary list for what many of us experience. They call it anticipatory grief, mourning a future that seems to be closing off the closer we get to it. They call it moral injury, the wound that comes when your deepest values are violated by forces beyond your control. They call it compassion fatigue, the exhaustion of caring too much for too long with too few resources. But the Torah has old names for these same valleys. And it's worth naming them and calling them out because the first step towards healing is recognizing what's going on. The first valley we'll talk about is the valley of the golden calf. This is the valley of collective moral failure, when the community or the nation around you makes choices that shatter what you thought was an established moral understanding. Israel stood at Mount Sinai for 40 days. They had heard the voice of Hashem, and then Aharon built the golden calf. If you've ever watched an institution that you loved collapsing, a leader you trusted failing, a culture reversing course towards something that you thought was buried and long gone. You have been in this valley, the tablets shatter, and you wonder, was any of it real? The next valley that we're coming to is the valley of the dry bones. This is a valley of personal and communal hopelessness, where the dream is dead, the vision has dried up, and even the bones are bleached white. Ezekiel's valley in chapter 37 is not a metaphor. It is a lived reality of a people in exile who had lost everything: the temple, the land, the priesthood, the national identity. And in 2026, the valley of the dry bones looks like a generation that has stopped believing in institutions, in marriage, in the future, in Hashem. The bones are scattered and very dry. The next valley that we're going to talk about is the valley of the cleft of the rock. This is a valley of spiritual hiddenness, when Hashem seems absent, when prayer feels like speaking into an empty room, when you cannot see His face no matter how long or how hard you look. Depression, grief, trauma, burned out feelings, all of these can produce this valley. And it is perhaps the loneliest of the three, because you cannot explain to anyone who has not been there. The Torah reading for this Shabbat addresses all three of these valleys in one single utterance. That is why the sages chose for it Chol, Hamoed, Pesach. This was not an accident. After the golden calf, after the worst collective failure in Israel's early history, what does Hashem do? He does not revoke the covenant. He renews it. And the mechanism of renewal is astonishingly, He reveals His own character. God instructs Moshe to carve 2 new tablets. The first tablets were carved by Hashem Himself. The second, Moshe carves them. The Talmud notes that this is not a demotion, but a partnership. The first time, Hashem did it all on His own. The second time, He required Moshe to be involved. When the covenant breaks, Hashem doesn't simply reset and pretend nothing happened. No, this isn't who our Creator is. He invites every human to participate, to be involved, to include their effort in the repair, in the teshuvah, in the return. This requires our hands to be on the chisel. And then Hashem descends and proclaims the 13 attributes of mercy, which become the central liturgy of all of our prayer in every moment of crisis, from Yom Kippur to personal petition. These 13 attributes of mercy become centralized to who we are. The Lord, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger. The Rambam tells us that these 13 attributes are not merely descriptive. They are covenantal guarantees that when Israel recites them, we are not flattering Hashem. We are invoking a promise. You promised this would happen. That is the same mercy that held the golden calf, that held after the golden calf, will hold now, today. The Rambam adds that teshuvah, that no sin is too great, for the attributes to cover, because the very announcement of them came after the gravest of all sins Israel had yet to commit. Just as the tablets were remade, whenever we find ourselves in difficult moments, we too can remake that moment. We too can re-establish goodness. The gift hidden in the rock, finding Hashem in the hidden. Hasidus does something that almost no other theology does or dares to do. It looks directly at the experience of Hashem's hiddenness and declares it holy. The teaching is that Hashem hides himself in layers, like a king who conceals himself behind curtains and walls, so that only those who truly seek him can find him. The hiddenness is not cruelty, it's an invitation to come, find me. See where I'm everywhere around you. This invitation, this very intensity of your longing for Hashem in the valley is the evidence that the divine spark within you has not and will not go out. This is exactly what we see in the text. Moshe is placed in the cleft of the rock, and Hashem's hand covers him. Notice Hashem's hand is on Moshe while his glory is passing. He's not abandoned in the dark. He's sheltered, protected, guarded. The Sefer Emet writes that the rock represents the world of material existence, the zimzum, the contraction, and that the cleft within it is the hidden opening through which the divine light still flows, even when we cannot see it directly. Wherever we find the imprint of humility, there you will find the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be He. The Rebbe tells us that those in the valley of spiritual hiddenness, that his teaching, it is a great mitzvah to always be happy. This is not a toxic positivity. He writes that in the years of darkness of your very own life, even after losing someone dear to you, even after persecution, even after crushing depression, even after all this, choose to seek, decide to choose joy, decide to pray with joy. Even when it feels like the words are just bouncing off the ceiling, choose to be joyful, choose to seek after Hashem. This decision itself is an act of faith that punches through the concealment, through the very darkness that you feel is choking your faith. Rebbe Sneerson, in his message on Chol Hamoed, says precisely this: the intermediate days are themselves holy. We are not merely waiting between the first day and the last day of Passover. We are in the sacred in-between, the liminal space where heaven and earth press close together. This is where a person who feels caught between grief and hope, between exile and redemption, between faith and doubt, that this person is living the theology of Chol Hamoed. For the valley of the spiritual hiddenness, your longing for Hashem is in itself a blessing. And it is in itself His presence also reaching towards you. The cleft in the rock is not where you are abandoned, it's where you are being held against the rock. Remember, it was Hashem's hand that held Moshe against the rock to begin with. the breath in the valley, the rock that raised the dry bones. The Haftorah of this Sabbath is one of the most dramatic texts of all Tanakh. Ezekiel's vision of the valley of dry bones, and it is read on this Sabbath for a reason that goes to the very heart of what our faith proclaims. Hashem takes Ezekiel into the valley, not up on a mountain, not into the temple, but into the valley, into the bones, to the place of utter death and hopelessness. And he asks, can these bones live? Ezekiel wisely does not presume. Adonai Elohim, you know. And then Hashem does something surprising. He does not just speak. He does not just breathe on the bones himself. He tells Ezekiel, speak to them. Your voice is part of this equation. You are part of the healing that needs to take place in your home, in this land, in this age. This stunning reversal of the modern sense of helplessness. Sometimes you feel like a bystander in the valley of catastrophe, but Hashem is telling us, your words have created power in this moment. So speak, prophesy, declare life, declare goodness. It's funny, Robertson and I were just talking about this at the store the other day. I said, we can't afford this. And she said, is that how you want to go about this today? My words, very much like Ezekiel, I had to speak what it is to be. And I said, you're right, we do have, let's go. So, even when you are not sure if anybody's listening, the bones start rattling before the breath ever arrives. Just like in the story, the rock, the spirit, comes in 4 stages. In Ezekiel 37, the bones come together. Then the sinew appears. Then the flesh covers them. Then the breath enters. Restoration is not instantaneous. It is layered. Progressive, patient, it is layered. This is the pattern of any and every genuine renewal, personal, communal, national. From our perspective, the vision is fulfilled and extended in Yeshua. The Apostle Paul in Romans 8 makes a direct connection. And if the rock of him who raised Yeshua from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Messiah from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his rock who dwells with you. The rock that moved over the bones of Ezekiel's valley is the same rock that raised Yeshua on the 3rd day, is the same rock that lives in every one of us who cry, here I am, Hashem. And notice the timing. This vision is placed at Pesach, the feast of the Lamb, the feast of redemption. The resurrection of Mashiach did not happen despite Pesach. It happened because of Pesach. As it is fulfillment, the dry bones of every generation find their answer in the empty tomb, not because death is denied, but because it is defeated. The same rock that breathed life into the valley of death breathes into us right now. You are not at the end of the story, you're at the beginning, you're at the rattling of your dry bones. The old rabbis attribute these 13 attributes that are covenantal guarantees that Hashem has survived the worst betrayals before, and the tablets were remade. Your situation is not beyond the reach of Hashem, who renewed the covenant after Israel worshipped a calf for 40 days. Your problem is not outside of the reach of Hashem. So to this, the cleft of the rock, you are not in the lost in darkness, you are sheltered in it. The Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe Nachman both testify from their deepest valleys of their lives that the longing itself is the encounter. So sing anyway, pray anyway, press through the curtain. The King is on the other side waiting for you. The dry bones, the Messianic word, the rock that raised Yeshua, is not done breathing. He told Ezekiel to prophesy, not to feel better first, not to have more faith first, but to speak first. Open your mouth and declare the goodness that you need in your life. What to do when we are in the valley? Number one, name your valley. You cannot be delivered from a valley you refuse to acknowledge. This week, be honest with yourself, with Hashem, with the people you trust, about which valley you are in. The golden calf, the cleft, or the dry bones. Name it. That naming is the beginning of the prayer. Number two, invoke the 13 attributes. The sages did not give us the 13 attributes just for Yom Kippur. They're for every moment that the covenant feels fragile. When we feel like we're distant from Hashem, pray them, declare them. Personally, seek out Hashem. You are Racham. You are Chanam. You are Erech. Let every attribute land on your specific situation. Number three, find your declaration to the bones of the moment. Is there a situation in your life that looks like Ezekiel's valley? Write it down, and then write 3 sentences of life over them. Not denial, but declaration. This marriage can breathe again. This son can come home. This ministry has not seen its last day. This job hasn't reached its limit. Make declarations in your life. And finally, rest in the cleft. Chol Hamoed is holy time. Neither the full fire of Yom Tov nor the ordinary press of the weekday. Let this Shabbat and the remaining days of Pesach be your cleft in the rock. Rest is not weakness. It is the posture of someone who believes that Hashem's hand is covering them, even in difficult moments. Trust Hashem's covering. Lean into it. With that being said, may Hashem bless you and keep you. Shabbat Shalom.